Hello, my friends. Today we'll start with the fact that the US has once again begun talking about the possibility of stopping the war and the outcome of negotiations. Kellogg said they are proposing to hold hostilities along the front line immediately.
And we took the Ukrainian term sheet, then we got what's called the Russian term sheet. They call it a memorandum, and we put them together. And we said, okay, how can you meld these two documents together to get to an end state? And we are pretty comfortable right now. We know what that looks like. We know what an end state could look like, should look like, and if we can just get to that point, we think it's winnable. Winnable meaning you can get to a peace agreement, and that's where you really want to get to.
Could you, sorry, could you share a little bit more on this end state that you've been mentioning? How does it look like?
Yeah. Well, when we talk about it, the term sheet, we talk about I call it a comprehensive.
Overall, the talks are continuing, but the war is only gaining momentum. And today it's clear that Putin has no plans to stop because they've launched offensives in all directions. The level of activity is so high that we haven't seen anything like this since the very beginning of the war. There is heavy fighting in Sumy region in the direction of Kostiantynivka, Pokrovsk, and Novopavlivka. Also, activity remains intense in the Lyman direction. They even had some successes there. So the situation on the front line is extremely difficult, and so far there is no sign that Russia intends to stop. And today, Putin announced that they are creating separate drone forces.
I'll note that we're now creating drone forces as a separate branch of the military. We must ensure their rapid and high-quality deployment and development. We know how the enemy operates, but overall, I don't believe we're lagging behind in any way. In fact, I think we've gained solid experience to form this branch. It's about training personnel, manufacturing, and supplying modern systems capable of enhancing our combat capabilities.
As you can see, Russia is strengthening its army. Let me know your thoughts about this in the comments. And today, Trump made yet another statement expressing his dissatisfaction that the war is still ongoing.
I'm very close to the situation. I'm very disappointed in Russia, but I'm disappointed in Ukraine also because I think deals could have been made. And, we're losing 6,000 people a week, soldiers mostly, but also people living in towns because they're getting hit by missiles again. How'd you like to live in a building and you think a missile has a good chance of hitting your building during the evening? It's horrible. Must be horrible to live like that.
And despite the fact that Zelensky is still waiting for Germany to send Taurus missiles to Ukraine, Pistorius openly stated they are not even considering it.
Are you considering sending Taurus missiles to us?
You're asking me whether we're considering it. My answer is no.
So, as before, Ukraine's partners remain afraid to fully enter the war and provide full scale support. That's why it's clear that victory is not on the table right now. The only question that remains is what territory will Ukraine manage to keep under its control? Zelensky also said there is still hope that the US will impose new sanctions.
As I've said before, this sanctions package is very important for us. We've discussed the details. They came to visit us. Their attitude was very positive, and we're truly grateful for that. But ultimately, the final decision lies with the White House, with the President of the United States. I'm counting on having a conversation about it at the G7 summit. And I really hope that if the necessary decisions aren't made before then, at least I'll get a sense of how close we are to that decision. It's important that there's coordination with EU countries, and that there's alignment and shared positions on sanctions packages. I believe that, in itself, is already a step forward.
Friends, be sure to share your thoughts on this in the comments. Now, Let's turn to the situation on the front line, starting with the Sumy direction. Despite all the difficulties and ongoing attacks, it can be said that the Ukrainian forces have managed to stop the Russian advance. According to recent reports, the general staff has brought in more reserves and the situation has stabilized for now. However, the assaults continue, more than 20 attacks a day, and it's still unclear how long the defense can hold. The pressure is very intense. The Russians are using FPV drones and artillery, but so far there have been no changes along the front line in the past 24 hours. Fighters on the ground describe the situation like this. In Sumy, the situation remains difficult. Yes, the Russians are now getting hit hard, but it's still a desperate defense with uncertain prospects. We don't know how far the Russians are willing to go in terms of regrouping reserves from other areas to reinforce Sumy. In some places, we managed to push them back, but overall, it's the swamp scum who hold the advantage and the initiative, and they are advancing too. Still, it's way too early to draw any firm conclusions. Like I said yesterday, there could be 20 different scenarios. The Russians might reach positions where they can hit Sumy with the tube artillery, or they might get smashed and get stuck where they are now. Let's not panic or relax too soon because nothing is clear yet. In the Kharkiv direction, Russian activity is slightly increasing. From time to time, Russian forces manage to break through the front line near the villages of Hleboke and Liptsi. However, as of today, the front line remains unchanged, and the Ukrainian forces are managing to repel all attacks. Shyrokyne continues as before. In Vovchansk, the Russians have currently halted the assaults and are focusing on Shyrokyne instead. Meanwhile, offensive operations have begun toward the village of Okhrimivka. Here, too, the Russians are carrying out attacks and they have managed to break through the border and gain a foothold near the village. For now, we're waiting to see how the situation develops, but it's clear they are trying to stretch the front line as much as possible to disperse and strain our forces. In the direction of Dvorichna, things are currently quiet. No new assaults have been reported. However, Russian sources claim they are making gradual progress here and allegedly achieving some success. The Russian army is expanding its foothold on the Kupiansk axis. After liberating Dvorichna, Russian troops continued their advance toward Dovhenka and Kutkivka, launching an assault on the latter. In addition, Ukrainian supply routes in the Kupiansk area are being cut off near Kondrashivka. It must be acknowledged that yes, they did capture Dvorichna, but that was quite a while ago, and there haven't been any new breakthroughs in this area for a long time. In the Kupiansk direction, attacks are still ongoing in the areas of Pishane and Stepova Novoselivka, but the rest of the front line remains unchanged. In the Borova direction, the Russians are assaulting Boguslavka, attempting to break through to Borisivka, Andriivka, storming Stepove, and advancing near Raigorodka. However, as of now, Russian forces haven't managed to secure any new positions over the past 24 hours, and the fighting continues. In the Lyman direction, the Russians continue the assaults on Zarichne, Yampolivka, and Zelena Dolina, and are storming Karpivka, Novy Mir, Andriivka, Olgivka, and Druzhelyubivka. As you can see, activity here is extremely high, and the Russians are trying to push forward along the entire front line. However, over the past 24 hours, they haven't achieved any new gains, and the Ukrainian forces have managed to repel all attacks. In the Siversk direction, the Russians are storming Grigorivka and pushing near Bilogorivka and Verkhnyokamyansk, but for now there have been no changes and all attacks have been successfully repelled. In the Kostantinivka direction, the Russians are assaulting Stupochki and pushing toward Bila Gora. Intense fighting is also ongoing for Delivka, Yablonivka, and Poltavka. Heavy shelling continues in the area, but for the second day in a row, Russian forces have failed to advance and the front line remains unchanged for now. In the Pokrovsk direction, activity is significantly higher. Russian forces are attempting to break through near the village of Malinivka, assaulting Myrolubivka, Lysivka, and Chunishine, and pushing near Zvirove and Kotlane. They are also storming Udachne and Novosergiyevka. Shelling here is constant, but over the past 24 hours there have been no changes to the front line. As for the situation around the village of Koptive, the Ukrainian side hasn't confirmed any Russian advances, although reports from yesterday indicated the possible capture of the village of Myrne. So for now, the situation in that area remains unclear, but overall, this direction remains extremely difficult. In the Novopavlivka direction, the Ukrainian side hasn't yet confirmed the loss of the village of Horihove, although Russian forces have claimed full control over it. Attacks also continue on Zeleny Kut, the village of Zaporizhia, Komar, and Myrne. Russian sources additionally claim that their forces have reached the area around the village of Dachne in Dnipropetrovsk region and have even entrenched themselves in a forested area. As of now, there has been no confirmation from the Ukrainian side, but in any case, the situation here is extremely tense. The Russians are clearly trying to push further, as their stated objective is to establish a buffer zone within Dnipropetrovsk region. In the direction of Velika Novosilka, Russian forces are assaulting the village of Shevchenko and Huliaipole and pushing toward the village of Zaporizhka. So, also carrying out heavy shelling. The situation here is also gradually deteriorating as Russian troops are now attempting to break through into Dnipropetrovsk region where the village of Zaporizhka. This is an official statement from the general staff, so there is no error. The front line is indeed moving and unfortunately not in our favor. In the Huliaipole direction, the Russians continue to assault Malinivka, carrying out about 5 attacks per day and shelling frontline areas. Overall, they haven't managed to break through. So far, they have only captured some positions near the village, and the fighting is ongoing. In the Zaporizhia direction, the Russians continue to assault Pavlivka and conduct heavy shelling. However, they have made no new gains in the past 24 hours. In the Kherson direction, the Russians continue attacks on the islands and shell the right bank. However, there have been no changes in the past 24 hours, and the situation can be described as stable. Meanwhile, Zelensky said that the war has entered a new phase, the struggle for finances.
I think we have moved to a stage of the war where everyone is fighting over finances. Technology is replacing old equipment and old weapons in any case. The Russians fight against sanctions because it limits their access to funds. Ukraine is also fighting for finances because production exists, but resources are lacking. I believe the main challenge ahead will be exactly this.
Friends, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. And that's all from me, so please Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell to stay updated on all the latest news. Thank you for watching and see you next time. Bye bye.